Okay, this week I'm actually going to use the idea of using a one shot to get into like a good old campaign idea. So now this is something that like my group and I, when we first got together, we did this one. So now we've been bouncing around to other like campaigns or like different games and stuff. So like after doing this one shot that I'm going to be talking about, we moved on to like do a Call of Cthulhu in a short campaign, and we're now in the as of this recording, like it's the day before we finish up with our cyberpunk campaign, and our next one on the docket is to get back into Star Wars. So like now personally, I'm someone who's a little torn because I'd like to get back into D&D, but I also like doing this like bouncing forth because like I would if I was just solely like a D&D, we wouldn't have gotten into the Call of Cthulhu campaign that we did. We wouldn't have done the cyberpunk that we're just going to be finishing up tomorrow as of this recording, and we wouldn't be getting into Star Wars. So that's why I'm kind of torn because like I like getting into these other things, the tribe and everything, but I also want to get back into D&D. But what I'm going to do is like what brought like our first thing that we got together and we did D&D and everything. So now, of course, with a couple new players that are pretty much like brand new to it, we had like in a sense like the DM had like probably about like a 7 or 8 different like pre-generated characters that we were able to pick from. So like having not played a cleric myself, I went with a dwarven cleric. We had like another one. The other veteran player went with like a furbolg druid, and then the two new players ended up. One went with the half elf bard, and the other one went with an orc paladin. So we kind of had like an interesting group with this one. So what we started off with like is the joy of extra dimensional spaces. So this is in like the Candlekeep Mysteries book. So this is a collection of one shots. Now I've gone over this book before, so it does come with like a map and everything that you can use as like I'll fold it out. So it does have, like I said, of Candlekeep. So this way, like you can actually get an idea of like if you've never played the like in Forgotten Realms or like uh, let alone Candlekeep. Now I was familiar with this Candlekeep already because now I'm going to date myself with the first Baldur's Gate game that came out way back in '98. I played that, so like I was already introduced to not only Forgotten Realms but through books and stuff like with the R.A. Salvatore's books with Drizzt and everything, but through Baldur's Gate and with this. So now there are going to be a bunch of spoilers in this, so like if you want to kind of like click off and go back and then like get a group together and go through this and then come back, and here's your chance and everything. So I'm kind of going to be going actually through this adventure, and I know in the past I've kind of not tended to, so not to try and give people spoilers, but this one is pretty much going to be able to like introduce like the idea of like a one shot and how you can use that to build up a campaign. So now, here's your last chance to kind of like click away, run the adventure, then come back and like see how like you went about it. So the concept of this one is like Fistandia as like an NPC who had been coming to like Candlekeep for years, and like she ended up like being able to use like a Mordecai's Magnificent Mansion spell that was successful and everything. So she ended up creating her own mansion, and she ended up in a sense creating a portal in like the room that she was getting. So then like it kind of like the mysteries like kind of like unfolds there, and so this sage Matreus comes in to try and investigate and everything, and so your PCs are coming from like a town like just outside of Candlekeep because like the way it's set up, the hook is your town is like has a blight, like crops are failing, and like Matreus the sage was mentioned that like hey look maybe he can help us save the town and everything. So our group went into this with that because our town was Mount Settle or whatever outside of Candlekeep, but of course you probably won't find that in like Forgotten Realms. But like we kind of like did our own like using this as a template in the Forgotten Realms as a template to kind of do our own thing type of deal. So proof that you don't necessarily have to use for publish stuff exactly as the way it is. You can kind of use it as like a base and go from there. So we had the town of Mount Settle. A couple of them were town members, like the half elf bard and like the furball druid were, in instance, town members and everything. And so I had come, my dwarven cleric, my backstory was I had come from the dwarven strongholds to like being a cleric. I'm like trying to go out and help the world and everything. So that was my hook. And like the paladin had like he was trying to right a wrong that he did in his past and everything. So we had our hooks to kind of get into the town and then go into like find Matrace to try and save it, the town. So you go, and of course, to get into Candlekeep, you need to have like a book, be like to gain entrance and everything. So like, we each had like our books and everything. So like I tried to make a copy of like my like a holy book or whatever, and I ended up having to give him the original and keep the copy and everything because like I failed miserably on the die roll. But then like as you get into like the Candlekeep, and the whole idea is to open in the portal and into like a Festania's mansion and everything. So this does give like everything you need. So like it gives you like the breakdown of like so in essence it's like kind of like a simplified dungeon crawl. So it's a good way to like I said, get people in. So this is like the layout of the actual mansion. So like you find Atreus did find the command word, and so he had disappeared, and he disappeared into Festania's mansion. And so like you do have like a couple combat encounters. So like here you see the stats for like the animated room, and like as I flip flip pages back and everything, you do have like the picture and stats for this animated swarm of books that you're going to fight and everything. So you pretty much like are investigating this whole place, trying to search for like Matraeus. Now you do find him, and so like each adventure, like it actually does sit here and breaks down like the actual descriptions of each room and gives you like the brief blurb on what the DM can use to describe the room and everything. So, and like as you can see, it's like there's not too many pages and everything. So like for this one, so as I flip back and fumble through stuff and everything, this one, well, it's relatively short, being a one shot, and so like all these are relatively short. So this starts on page 17 and ends on page 25. So it's basically like only like 8-9 pages long. And so now the conclusion that's in the book is that like you fight like an imp and everything, but then like as you escape, like the Matraeus gets stung and killed, and like you are teleported back to the Candlekeep, and that's where you find him dead and everything. But like we were actually able to save Matraeus in our campaign, and we were able to like bring him back to our town. And of course, like that's how we use this one shot to as like a springboard. Now, as like in a sense like a springboard into a campaign, we were able to extend it and like find out like, oh hey, look, he really can't help us directly, but like because there's like what we found out was that there was an actual anchor in a sense for the curse that was in the Shadowfell. And so this is how we extended the campaign beyond just this one shot, and we expanded into like going into like the Shadowfell to find the actual anchor, and like through our adventures like through the Shadowfell, and like dealing with like the shadowy realm, and like we like my character, I remember like we came across the ferryman, so he was kind of like a almost Odin like, or like a Hades like, or like the riverman for Styx and everything. So I had to give up like a piece of myself to be able to cross over to be able to get to where we were going. And of course, like the DM introduced one of her PCs from a previous campaign as like an NPC, and we did come and through the Shadowfell, we did actually come across Festandia herself and everything, and we actually had a good like a back and forth with her, and then like we did find the anchor, and we were able to destroy it and then come back through the Shadowfell and everything. So that's how like we were able to extend this one shot into like another like two or three, maybe 4 sessions and everything. So that's like the kind of like the concept of how you can use like a one shot as like a springboard. into like a campaign. So now, of course, I use the example of like how my group and I used like one shot. So now, of course, with a book like this, there's several other ones, and of course, like you could use. I've said before, you can use just one to kind of do like what we did, to springboard into like going beyond and like doing several sessions afterwards and extended adventure, and we were successful. And of course, all our characters survived, so like we could in essence circle back to them as well. Or like I've said before, you could use this whole book and just go one shot right after another to be able to do campaign. But like this is like a video for an idea and how like you can use a one shot as a campaign uh, beginner, or like maybe like your doesn't necessarily have to begin a campaign. You could be in between like adventures or something, and like for instance with this the stand like the joy of extra dimensional travels or whatever. What you could do is you could be like in a sense like passing through that like a town that has a splight or whatever. Like in our essence, in our example, Mount Settle or whatever, you could come across them, and then like, oh hey, here's another quick side quest or whatever that you could do, get into this, and then like kind of like a filler episode. So that's another way you could use these one shots in a grand scheme of like a campaign and everything. So but this is how like we use my group and I used the one shot to springboard us into a campaign. And so this is like just another idea for the whole, in a sense, DM ideas on how to start a campaign and everything. So this is just like I said, just another example on how you can get a campaign started, if, especially like if you're a brand new DM as well.